Metro! Man. Oh man, am I excited. How's it going, everybody? My name is Infamous Isaac, and welcome to part 2 of Lostbelt 6 Act 2. So the reason I had to split this video up is because I edit on my PS5 using Share Factory because I don't have a computer, and so Share Factory has a limit to how long the videos can be, which is usually an hour. And since last video was 57 minutes long, I couldn't put this video together. So if I had the option to, I would have put Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 into one video. Even though it would have been crazy long, I would have preferred it that way. So unfortunately now they're split into 3 separate videos, but I'll make sure to put the links in the description below so people can have an easy way of managing what they need to watch. So before watching, I am going to go into spoilers immediately for Lostbelt 6 Act 2. So if you haven't watched Act 1 or the first part of this video, then do not watch this. If you have the virtue of being completely blind in terms of the story, then please, I beg of you, keep it that way. So without further ado, this is Lostbelt 6 Act 2 Part 2. Hope you all sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So as we begin the Manchester section, we're going over to Manchester. And on the way, we're talking about what we should do after that because it's only really a pit stop to see Bargus and all that. So Da Vinci comes up with a plan like, alright, why don't we go to Orkney instead, right? Because all of the Queen's forces are going to be down near Oxford. Why don't we optimize and take care of the bell that's over there, see what's going on over there? Oberon is against it because Orkney's dangerous. Like, if we go there, we have a chance of just risking it all, you know? And so instead, he wants to mobilize the forces to go north. But everybody's against that because of the fact that Nakanaria would mobilize her forces against them because she sees Artoria as a rival still, not as a partner. And so everybody, even Artoria, shares the same sentiment with Da Vinci, you know, this is the way to go. So Oberon is just like, alright, well shoot, if anything, just be careful then. So Oberon, Percival, and Gareth decide to head back to Londinium. Gareth because she wants to take care of the people there, Percival because he's the leader, and Oberon because he wants to do more scouting and stuff like that. So now all the people that we have left are Da Vinci, Fujimaru, Artoria, Muramasa, and Habitrot. While we're making our way to Manchester though, Artoria has a dream of her proper human history self again. And this time it's her pulling Caliburn out of the stone, right? Merlin is narrating how she doesn't have to take the weight of the world by herself, but she still did it anyway, and Artoria agrees, because having to carry the burden of that weight by yourself when the world should carry it equally is just, it's not fair. But she still carried it anyways, even though she was betrayed by her knights, ostracized, and left to die. Artoria just can't understand why her other self would do that. And she asks her, like, why? Why would you go through all this? It's just not fair. Nobody deserves to go through that. So why did you? And she's like, if anything, you would know the answer better than most. And then she wakes up as everybody's heading over to Manchester. One thing I forgot to mention is that Oberon was completely against going to Manchester, like at least for right now. But Da Vinci, after he left, was just like, yeah, let's go to Manchester. We're gonna go to Orkney later. So they go to Manchester. They try to meet Bargus. They get into some trouble with a ferry, but it's just because the war sentiment's building up. They find her in her mansion, and she's just like, yo, let me fight you guys real quick. Only Da Vinci and Fujimaru. And so we managed to beat her so she can gain our trust, and then we have a nice dinner with her, right? And she's talking to us about the human boy that she's taking care of right now named Adonis. And he's super sickly. The man can barely get out of bed. He's bedridden. And she's just like, he wished to meet Fujimaru, but he can't. He has to get his rest. But Bargus really hopes that Fujimaru will come back after Camelot to meet him and see him for the first time. You know, she feels like they'd be great friends. But besides that, Vargas is just talking about them taking some ferries onto the storm border. And Da Vinci's like, yeah, you know, the storm border can handle like 500 ferries, 500 extra people, because at the end of the day, it's meant to be like a Noah's Ark clone type thing, right? And so she's like, no matter what, you know, I'm happy that just some ferries will be able to live and that she'll pay for her crimes for serving under Morgan after the battle's done. But first, she's gonna fight for us. She's gonna go back to Camelot, fight for Queen Morgan, but then as soon as the army shows up, she's gonna fight against Queen Morgan. And Artoria's just like, yeah, but we're not gonna trust you at the gates. And so as they're about to leave, Artoria's just like, man, I don't want to be here no more, man. I want to talk to Bargus. Like, and it's super funny, right? Because we always see Artoria call her Baggy, but we don't know why she does that. They don't know each other on a personal level, but Artoria always does that. I don't know if they have history or not. I really hope they do because you don't call somebody like that a nickname, without knowing them at some point, So I really hope they do. But before they all leave, Vargas asks, like, I just don't understand one thing, and it's about Barrow, right? Why he keeps insisting that Morgan is his servant. And everybody's talking about, like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense because if he summoned a servant, there would be two Morgans right now. And there hasn't been. No, it's just been left a mystery as to what happened to his servant or if the fairy queen Morgan is his servant. What's going on? As everybody is leaving Manchester, we cut away to Beryl and a flashback of him. It's back when he was resurrected by the foreign god, and he was second to be resurrected right after Kirstaria. And Kirstaria basically gave him an objective, right? Do not let the Lostbelt tree blossom in the British Lostbelt. This is your place, right? I'm gonna give it to you. You have to wither it. Can't let him have it. Barrow happily accepts the job and goes over to the British Lostbelt and he summons Morgan, right, as his servant with using his Sirius light. And then everything that follows afterwards, we'll find out soon, right? But after that, we cut to the present where we see him talking to Morgan and he's just like, yo, listen, you need to relax a little bit. Like, you gotta just chill. And she's like, I don't need to, like, these guys aren't my enemies. They're not strong enough to be considered opposition, right? And she also chastises Barrow for not even being able to take care of Babo and Sith. And she's like, she's gonna have to reconsider her master and her husband. So she tells Barrow to go over to New Darlington and just be like, yo, Babo and Sith isn't gonna get any more chances. It's time for her to relax. And that's the end of the Manchester chapter. So, as we move on to fragment number 8, we see Mash and Asek going on to their journey, and it's been 5 months since Mash showed up there, so a lot of things have changed. They've gone around exploring more ruins and caves, trying to find out more if there's like more Hermios around Britain or if it's just only in the pit type stuff, and just learning. And as we see more of their journey, we see Totoro becoming better at sewing, gaining more confidence and just believing in her dream more, right? Of wanting to make more brides and seeing them like be sent off like Asek. She's making Asek's dress and she's talking to Master. She's like, "Why'd you call me Habitat when you first got here?" And Master's just like, "Oh, because you just reminded me of someone that I used to know." And then Asek is just like, "Come on, man, you can't be talking about this stuff outside of your own time." And so Asek is talking to Mash, and she's just like, thank you for showing up, even though, it wasn't your intention. Like, you really helped out Todorot and just overall have lifted up the mood of this place. No, no worries. Like, it wasn't intentional. I just literally, like, showed up at the right place at the right time type stuff. Basically, like, putting the credit off of her and just more like putting it to coincidence. And while Asek is listening, she decides to let the barrier down and just tell Mash the truth. Like, Asek is a wish. Like at the end of the day, Asek just doesn't care about the fairies anymore because of the way that they treated her. For 3,600 years, she's just taking care of the great calamities every millennia, the normal calamities every 100 years. It's like there's no thanks, there's no care. Like literally, the fairies just view her as a witch. Like she comes through, and then they see her as like the next calamity, and she's just been mistreated this whole time. So she's just trying to take care of Britain as best as she can, because it's the only place that can take her. Because Britain doesn't judge her, the fairies do. And Mash is just sad to hear that because she's helped out so much, but she's got nothing in return. And it's not like she wanted anything in return. She just wanted to be treated normally. But regardless, Asek, after bearing her soul to Mash, is just basically like, at the end of the day, we still have to get you home because you don't belong here. And because if you stay before the turn of the Queen era, then you're going to die. You're going to disappear. So we need to send you there somehow, right? And her plan is basically like, all right, why don't we freeze you? And if nothing happens in Norwich to change what happened, then you'll be there. You'll be fine. One thing I did want to mention is that looking back on this while editing it, there were two mashes in Lost Boat 6 at some point, and that's the beauty of time travel, is that you don't know anything until you understand how it happened. I love time travel stories like this, so it just does a little thing for me in my heart. And that's the end of fragment number 8, as we move on to the Lake District, aka Albion. So Albion starts off with us getting to the Lake District, and we're basically here talking to everybody like, all right, well, how do we digest all the information that we just got from Vargas and stuff like that? How do we find out the mystery behind the barrel in the server, right? And Artorias is basically like, I don't really want to think about it, like it doesn't matter. And Habitat's like, yeah, at the end of the day, you don't have to fight Morgan. Even if she was or wasn't his servant, she's still cracked out of her mind in terms of strength. So Habitat gives solace to Artoria like, yo, all you have to do is just ring the bells of pilgrimage, right? At the end of the day, the prophecy doesn't say who beats Morgan. So if you don't beat her, then that's perfectly fine, you know, at least in my eyes. Besides, at the end of the day, my goal is to reunite Math with Fujimaru. Don't put too much weight on your shoulders because of people's expectations being heavier than what you can carry, you know? And I think that's really good advice for Artoria because at the end of the day, this is a heavy burden. Just like with proper human history Artoria, how she had to carry the burden of the world. Artoria has to carry the burden of this world, but literally this is the only country that exists. So this might as well be the whole planet. But regardless, this is when a lot of the exposition starts coming in, where Da Vinci starts asking about the history of this world since Habitat has some knowledge of it. She used to dwell around these parts for a little bit. And basically, she starts telling us about the Northern Fairies and the wars that they were involved in. So the Spring War was basically the Northern Fairies before they moved to Ireland and encroaching upon the Southern Fairies because they wished they had more land, right? And the Southern Fairies managed to win because the Southern Fairies just had more numbers, you know? And at the end of the day, the Northern Fairies weren't stronger than the Southern Fairies. So they had to literally move to Ireland and create Ireland entirely. And literally, it was only Maeve herself, the queen before Knocknaria came to be, because the Northern Fairies were literally getting murdered as soon as they spawned into existence. And so Maeve created Ireland and started over again, you know? And this time she brought over some humans because instead of making humans their tools and just only entertainment, she lived alongside humans. So when Knocknaria came back to Fairy Britain, she had humans and fairies ready for war on top of them just being stronger now because they developed. For the War of the Summer, she had a pretty good chance of winning. But Aesic stopped her from encroaching on the south because she would have just killed all of them. And they made a peace treaty. So now Maeve became the leader of the King Clan, and the King Clan is just all Northern Fairies, you know. Da Vinci's also asking about the Rain Clan and the Mirror Clan and what happened to them, and Habitat will explain that later on when we camp and we settle down. They all find a way to settle down in a forest near the Lake District, and so everybody's chilling. Muramas is gathering firewood. Artoria's putting a bounded field. Habitat's just chilling, and Da Vinci's writing a report to the storm border. And so once everybody ate their food, they go back into the lore of this world. So as everybody's dying down, Habitat begins to tell the story, right? And it's basically the story behind Cernunnos and how Fairy Britain was created. One thing I forgot to mention was that Orkney in the Lake District that they're going to is near the Lostbelt tree, or at least the ruins of it. If you remember, the Lostbelt tree is cooked. Morgan cooked it herself, you know? So that's why we have no president to really take care of this Lostbelt until Morgan became a threat, you know? Declaring war on us. So Habitat begins by talking about how there was a group of fairies that woke up one day and the world was just entirely ocean. They don't know what happened, but the only thing there was just them and ocean. They prayed, you know, for one day, like, hey, we need help. And Hernando showed up and he was just like this big, fluffy guy, and he took care of them. In return, they gave him happiness and joy. And so he made Fairy Britain like the ground for it, at least the very beginning of it, right? And so they prayed and worshipped him. And on top of Herninos was a human, because they viewed him as an animal type thing. And that human must have been the priestess. At least that's what Da Vinci theorizes. And so through that, they began building the foundations for Britain. And all of these clan heads came to be. And then all of the wars that would subsequently come happened and all that. And then we get to the present day, right? And it's just a lot of lore on the creation of this island. And it's not done. There's still a lot more to learn. They wake up the next day and they decide to go to the ruins of Albion, and they find a phantom servant, and she's one of the last remnants of the Mirror clan, the same clan that made Angel's prophecy. And so she's basically here to deliver a message to the child of prophecy, right? And so now she's found her. It's like, oh shoot, bet my job is almost done. But first, there's actually somebody here who's messing with Albion's body, and I was wondering if you guys could do something about it. And they're like, I mean, I guess we have something to do, but sure, why not? And so they go to check because the Phantom Spear mentions that it's Konya Skanya here. And once they get to the remains, they see this is NFF Services, aka her service. And we see Lancelot show up as well to help us take out some Moors. And she's like, I was originally not gonna help you guys, but it's because Moors are taking over my home, so I have to stop them, right? And then the Phantom Servant tells her about Konyaskanya, and then Lancelot immediately goes over there, right? And so they start beefing with her. Konyaskanya sends out a giant Moorish dragon with the regrets and pain of the Rain clan. We managed to beat it because even though it was a Norwick level calamity, we have Lancelot, and she's a Norwick level calamity. especially since he removed her night name and revealed to us her true name, which I can finally say. I've been cutting it out so many times that I've been editing because I don't want to spoil it. Her name is Melusine, and a lot of people know her by that name in the community. So it's like, man, it's so hard to not to just refer to her like that, man. But regardless, Melusine is her name, right? And afterwards, they're gonna keep referring to her as Lancelot because, out of respect for her, she asks like, "Please don't call me Melusine." And they're like, "All right, fine, we won't call you that because you helped us out." They stop the dragon. They chase off Koyaskanya. They start talking to the Phantom Sphere like, "Oh, shoot, you guys did it, nice." Now Albion's body won't be desecrated anymore by her because Koyaskanya is trying to capture creatures for her own benefit, right? Because she's planning something, she's scheming. Because at the end of the day, she's a beast. And so right before Lancelot leaves, she manages to injure Koyaskanya fatally. And so Koyaskanya, she's salty, like she's bitter, so she has to run away now. And so Melusine was just like, all right, well, that's enough for me. Yeah, don't tell Percival about this, and I'll be seeing you guys at Camelot, where we're gonna be ops. And basically, we're just learning more about Melusine here before she leaves, where Melusine is a part of Albion. She is Albion's claw, and Albion is the last dragon, right? And Albion's corpse is just here, and Melusine spawned from it, just sewage, right? Just mud. And so when Aurora showed up over there, and she was with Coral, she was like, oh shoot, there's somebody here. And so once she went to go reach for Melusine, Melusine took like actual shape. Because before that, again, she was just mud. And so then she became the most beautiful knight because she was serving under Aurora. She helped train Percival. And after that, she became Morgan's servant, you know? She became Morgan's knight. So the Phantom Servant leaves Artoria with one message, and it's just basically like, the child of prophecy will arrive soon. She arrives and when she dies, and then she dies. And it was kind of sad, I'm not gonna lie. So a couple of things I neglected to mention. Number one, the reason why the Phantom Servant wanted them to help this place out was because if they didn't help it, and Albion's remains were desecrated, then the whole area of this northern area would have just gone back into the ocean. So they literally just could not have that happen because they wouldn't be able to get to Orkney at that point. Another thing is that Melusine, she helped raise Percival, right? And she's just super sad about how he turned out because they're gonna be mortal enemies at this point. She serves Morgul while he serves freedom, you know, rebellion. And so she just wonders where things went wrong when he was raising him, hoping that he would be able to be a proper human history person. That's just how the cards were dealt. And after that, Oberon and Koyaskanya went to talk again after she fled. And he's basically just like, hey, listen, I know you're going to leave, and I know you're blaming me for that faulty information. It wasn't faulty, it's just you didn't make good on it. But also, there's still a stronger weapon than Albion here. So if you stay, I promise it will be worth your while, you know? And while you think like, oh shoot, is he scheming against us? He isn't. He's just more using Koyaskanya for his own needs, as in helping Chaldea out, right? Because he says it himself that he doesn't want to help an enemy of Chaldea, so he wasn't gonna give her all the information. He just gave her enough for it to be suitable for her, right? So she sticks around, and we're gonna see her for a little while longer, right? But now we head off to Orkney. But before that, another fragment. So this is the last of the fragments that we're ever going to get in Lostbelt 6. Fragment number 9. And this fragment basically involves Mash and Totoro basically being like, alright, well, shoot, it's time for you to go. Asek is preparing to wither the tree, and she knows that a lot of fairies are going to die because of that. But it's what's best for this place, I guess, right? So Mash just feels some real existential sadness because she can't stay here, you know? But Totoro herself says like, hey, you don't belong here, you know? Like the fact that you showed up at all is an exception. So while I enjoyed it, you do belong in the future, you know? And the fact that Fairy Britain still exists in the future means that we're gonna be fine, you know? So don't worry. And Mash still being sad, Totoro just goes on and be like, yo, listen, I'm gonna make 100 dresses, right? I'm gonna continue my dream and I'm gonna do it just for you. I'm gonna make a dress so pretty, only for you, that you're gonna love it, you know? So don't worry, I'll keep good on my promise. And so Mash, she smiles at that, and then she goes with Asek, and Asek puts her to sleep, making Mash the first fairy knight. So Totoro, while she's dying, she sprinkles some powder that Grimir gave her, one of the people that Asek used to know in the fairy calendar, and she basically just petrifies herself because she already seen like 100 wives wet off. She made the dresses, but she couldn't do it for Mash just yet, right? So she still has to live. But at this point, she's almost dead. Like she's blind, she can't talk, she can't move, nothing, right? And so Asek is just exacting her vengeance. This is the war of winter, I think, and things are just going wild. But this marks the end of the fragments and the end of Asek's journey, the failed pilgrimage. This was the first one that laid out the groundwork for Artoria. So just like Albion, Orkney has a lot of exposition, if not more, because of the reveals that happen in it. But regardless, we show up at Orkney, and one of the white wolves that we saw all the way back in Sheffield is here, and it leads us all the way to a boat on a separate little island near Orkney, right? And so who we see there is Grimir, one of the people from Asek's journey, a reincarnated version of Grimir, who was Cucullin, right? We saw him before in Sheffield, back when Mash was there, right? And so Kucaster basically just explains, like, yo, I am the same Ku from Fuyuki, and I am also Grimir, I'm a divine spirit. And the reason why is because Odin, I am basically his proxy here, right? And so he's basically explaining, like, yeah, so this is what I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to test if you're the child of prophecy. He tests us, we win. And he's basically, all right, well, here's Mash. We're going to take you to her. And don't ask me about the Fae era because in reality, she knows a lot more than I do. And so he takes us to her and he tells Fujiwara, like, yo, if you touch that ice, she will immediately break free. And then we cut away to Back to the Past, where we see Asek just in complete shambles. Uther was poisoned by fairies that shared the anti-human sentiment, so him trying to be king just didn't sit right with them, right? And so they killed him. And Asek is just sitting there just mourning the loss, right? Like everything that she tries to do is just taken away from her because of these fairies. And she remembers proper human history version of her and how the same thing happened there, but just with humans instead, like there's no difference. So instead, she's going to protect Britain going forward. So as she goes to destroy the Lostbelt tree, she sends Mash into the block of ice, calling her the first fairy knight. And basically, the whole reason is just like, yeah, you are a contradiction. So if anybody finds that out, you're going to be erased and purged by the fairy queen, right? So we have to keep you here, and as long as you don't do anything before the 2019 Norwich incident, then you're perfectly fine. So Mash is just super sad hearing how everything went down because she was there, she was there to live it. And Asek is just like, don't worry, like at the end of the day, I knew I was going to fail, but I still had to try, because this is what my life was destined to be. And so Mash is just like thanking her and all that for helping her out. And Asek is just like, don't worry, you really helped me out. And Totoro before this was talking to Mash like, yeah, you really helped fill the hole in her heart. She felt so vapid and devoid of anything before you got here, and then you got here and you helped her out so much. But as Mash is closing up, Asek reveals to her that, hey, Asek is just a pseudonym. My real name is Morgan. And so this is where one of the biggest reveals of the story comes in. High Queen Morgan is Asek the Savior. And that's why she did everything that she did. She hates fairies and doesn't want to protect any of them because of what they did to her as Asek the Savior. So in reality, in her mind, she's justified because what did they do for her, right? And even then, she left the fairies to die, she still protected them. Even though she was using the calamities and all that stuff, she was abusing the fact that the fake calendar was going to happen no matter what. So she would send the calamities back to the past because she knew it wouldn't change anything in the present. So she just threw it in there willy nilly. That twist was crazy, dog. Actually nutty. But as we go back to the present, we see Fujimaru touch the ice and Mash is set free. So as Mash is freed from the ice, her and Fujimaru immediately hug, and Artoria's like, oh, that's sweet, It's great to see that happen. But she feels kind of like a disconnect between the two now because Fujimaru has a friend like Mash. Artoria feels like she doesn't really have one, but I think it's kind of dumb because the whole time Fujimaru was that friend, it still is. Mash starts telling all of them about the history that she experienced and everything, and then Grimir is like, all right, well, Artoria, what's your side on this, right? Because Mash dropped the bomb that Morgan is Asek, right? And so, since both of them are children of paradise, Artoria gives the mission statement that she was given from birth, right? Go to Britain and make things right, because she was born from Avalon. But the difference between her and Morgan was that Morgan came from Avalon and was put into Orkney and was raised by the Rain Clan's leader, while Artoria came from Avalon and washed up near Ainsel, but Ainsel threw her back in. The Tentacle clan, the one that she saw before Woodrose burned it down, was the one that raised her. So Da Vinci summarizes everything that she heard from Mash and from Artoria and basically just comes to the conclusion that Morgan somehow found a way to divert the path that the British Lost Belt was on to a different one, making it a whole different human history. So originally, it wasn't supposed to go to the Queen era. It was supposed to end with the Fae era, There was only supposed to be one era. but Morgan somehow find a way to continue it and then make the Queen era after all the wars happened, and then this is where the Winter War goes on. And so now they just have to find out what Morgan really did to change all that, right? So once they meet her in Camelot, they're gonna see like, all right, this is how it's going to go, right? How did you do it? After everybody gets their bearings, after Habitrot and Mash see each other, she doesn't recognize her, right? And that's one thing I did want to mention. It's like, what is going on with Habitrot? How do you go from Habitrot here, right? And her seeing Mash in Sheffield to Totoro in the past, and then you go back to the present with Habitrot, and then Mash doesn't remember her. It's like, what's going on with her presence? So after the heroes ring the bell, they're at 4 now, and they decide to go to Knocknaria's camp, since it's right next to them, right? And that's the end of Orkney. So we go over to Edinburgh, and here we get Knocknaria because Orkney was in her territory, right? So we have to talk to her about everything like that, and also for the alliance. And so she's just basically like, "Oh shoot, you guys rang the bell." So Morgan was like, "I'm gonna have to kill you guys," but I was gonna wage war against her anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But you did go into my territory, just like how you went into the chocolate fields. And she notices that Oberon and Gareth aren't there. She's sad that Gareth isn't there because she wanted to show her the chocolate factory. But also, she was sad that Artoria didn't barge in and they could just fight. Snaknaria recognizes Artoria as an equal ally, so she's like, alright, sure, you can join my alliance and I'll lead it. And then Artoria's like, nah, I'm gonna lead it. And so they have a battle, right? They're gonna have a battle of chocolate proportions. There's gonna be a Maeve chocolate battle. And so basically they have to make chocolate in a day, and whoever wins gets to lead the alliance, right? And then Nakaria adds in, and they also get to keep Fujimaru. It's like, oh, wow, okay. So they both prepare, and we have Artoria being helped up by Mash because Fujimaru asked her to. And then you have Nocnaria, who has her attendants and all that. So you have Kokolin and Muramasa and Fujimaru seeing what this place has to offer, while you have Regerbit and Habitat exploring their own places, right? And they basically come to the conclusion that, like, this place was ran by nobody for 1,500 years. And then she just shows up and she's able to run it again, bro. And the Habitat mutters under her breath, this might be a calamity. But after seeing some strange things, they go back to where the contest is being held, and Nagnaria actually calls in for Fujimaru to talk to her, and he's telling her about proper human history because she asked, right? And she was like, "Oh, you're not gonna tell me because Da Vinci isn't here, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." So basically, it starts off like this, and then they just go on for an hour, and she's so overwhelmed, like she needs time to process it. But overall, she's very similar to Maeve, so it's like, yeah, he knows what he's doing. After telling her all that, she tells him about how the queen fell and why a human dying meant so much to her, right? It's because that was her lover. Nocnaria herself hates humans, right? She just doesn't see them as useful. So while they have different views on humanity, at the end of the day, she still wants to have them because of the fact that they help out in the factories. But regardless, she's basically like, yo, so get ready because once Artoria loses, all the humans are going to go over here and they're going to be put in a factory where they get good deals and good, like, pension plans, basically. Fujimaru is basically like, nah, yeah, that's not going to happen. Artoria is going to win, so get ready to join our alliance. And then, as he's ready to go to bed, Oberon sneaks into his room and he's like, yo, so how's it going, man? How's everything going? And Fujimaru just tells him, like, yeah, everything happened and all that. And Oberon congratulates him for ringing the bell and all that. They're talking and they're just getting down to brass tacks about, like, Artoria and how she really hides her emotions. Not well, but she hides it. So it's hard to really tell what she's thinking sometimes. But Oberon kind of looks at her like his own daughter in a sense by protecting her as best as he can. By telling her, like, yo, you gotta do this, this, and this for her own well being. But she's so stubborn, so it's hard to do. He's basically just like, Fujimaru, you really have to help her out, bro. Like, she's stupid, but in a loving and caring way. And Fujimaru was like, yeah, we gotta help her out as best as we can because the bells, they have been taking a toll on her. We don't know why, but they have. And so as Oberon goes to leave, Fujimaru asks him if he sees Artoria the same way that he did to Tanya in his Midsummer's Night, I think is what it's called. And again, Oberon always mentions it whenever he brings it up. Titania was a plot device. That wasn't his wife. And what that entails is that because she was a plot device, he can't love her because she might as well have not existed. She was there to serve a means to an end. We move on to the next day. The battle begins. Alright, the final one for the day. And then after that, we'll see how long it takes. I really hope this is not like a 2 hour video because I'm not going to be able to do that. Oh man, I don't know what's waiting for me at the end of this tunnel, dog, but We just have to wait and see, right? We're just gonna have to wait and see. But regardless, the day has come, the battle has started. So Devil Karen, who is just normal Karen, funnily enough, I actually summoned for her back in Valentine's Day. It was completely on impulse. I don't regret it, but I'm not proud of it. She's the one looking over the battle, and we have two contestants. The two contestants are Nocnaria and her crew that's helping her out, and then we have Artoria with Mash helping her out. Nocnaria's chocolate is Edinburgh made into chocolate form, while Artoria is just a simple heart-shaped chocolate. And it was from Mash because nobody knows what a heart is. Off of sheer design and passion alone, Artoria's chocolate wins, but because she put every ingredient known to man into the chocolate, it becomes sentient and literally starts killing everybody, turning everybody into chocolate like it's Boo. And so they have to fight him and destroy it. And this scene is really funny. Like I ain't gonna lie to you guys, it was definitely the brevity that we needed in the story because it was so tense. So seeing that, it was just funny seeing all the characters have a good time. Really enjoyed it. It reminds me of Act 1. But Artoria is declared the winner after that travesty, and Nocnaria swears that she will join the Alliance and that Artoria will lead it. So she will serve her. She won't work with the Round Table Army, but she will work with her. After that whole nonsense, they leave Edinburgh, and they can't work together just yet because they have to ring Oxford's bell. Because if they work together and they declare like yeah we're working together, then Morgan would just bring back all her troops and have them fight Nocnaria herself, you know. So it just wouldn't be a smart decision. So they leave to go to Oxford near Londinium, ready to ring that bell. They don't know where the sixth bell is, so they don't really have any plans on finding it honestly. But as they're on their way back to Oxford, they get jump scared by a couple of human Moors, which is something that we haven't seen yet. The person that orchestrated it was Babo and Sif, and she took one of the relics that Morgan had, and it's called the Lost Will. So you basically get put into it, and it removes your will to do anything, you know, basically killing you in a sense if you decide to give up. And so Babo and Sif uses it on Fujimaru, and Artoria gets sucked in as well because she tries to protect him. So those two are in the Lost Will. So now we are in the Garden of Lost Wills section, where we see Tristan laying down in her room, right, in New Darlington, and her fingers are rotting off, like she's literally rotting to the core. And the reason for that is because of Beryl and the magic that he taught her, because of the witchcraft and all that. And if you remember back when he was fighting wood wolves with her, he basically mentioned to himself like, yeah, I didn't tell her that this would rot her to the core, and he meant that literally. So she's literally rotting her entire body to the point where she doesn't even feel it, and she's just bedridden because of it. And we see a flashback at the start of this section of Tristan and seeing her in New Darlington and just seeing the reception that she gets whenever she's around people, right? Because I mentioned in the last video how Tristan, she's not really likable because of how many people she kills just because she wants to. And it's because that they anger her, right? Because they see people happy and it makes her angry. And also reminds her of her mother, who she loves dearly, but at the same time, she has such a hard time trying to please her. But the way she's trying to please her is by killing people. And we can see from Morgan that Morgan doesn't kill people senselessly. She has reason for it, you know? Like, even though she doesn't care about these fairies, she's not just killing people just to kill people, you know? She's a ruler at the end of the day. If you're gonna be Morgan's successor, you can't just thoughtlessly kill people just because they make you mad, you know? Because that's not the makings of a ruler. That's the makings of a tyrant. But as Tristan is rotting away in her bed, Beryl takes the lost will and he leaves, right? So we cut away to Artoria and Fujimaru where we see them in the Garden of Lost Wills. So Artoria is just like, alright, well, I mean, this stuff doesn't really phase me anymore, so I'm just gonna cut the line or wait for Tristan to lose magical energy because she doesn't have enough to sustain it. And so she sees memories of her past in Tentacle and seeing how they treated her, basically treating her like a slave. And either she could rebel or she could reject, but in reality, the trouble wasn't worth it. So she just did it without asking, right? And then she got a vision of her going to kill Hector, aka her grandpa. And if you remember, Hector was with Asek in the beginning. Like, she cuts the line to the vision. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna wait for Tristan to stop. And so she sees Fujimaru on their side. She sees all the doubts that they have, like, what if they get replaced with Kadak when things are all said and done? All these regrets and guilt and just horrible feelings that are weighing them down, right? But then they see a vision of Romani and they're just like, hey, man, at the end of the day, you gotta live without regrets. You gotta live 100% of the time knowing that you made your decision, completely knowing that you made it and that you're fine with what happens, even if you don't know what's going to happen. You made that choice. And so Fujimaru gets back up and is like, yo, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. And so they get the will to fight back. And the two break out of the Lost Will because Mash breaks them out of it. And they wake up in a strange area. So once Mash gets everybody out of the Lost Will, we find out that we're in the outskirts of New Darlington in like a secret facility, and Pepe's also there because he helped Mash find this place. What we find out is that Beryl was actually working in this place, making human Moore's curse, right? And so that's why we see so many of them here. And when we see him, he explains that we try to escape because the place is set to collapse. And once we get to a certain area, Pepe blocks us out, like he locks us into a room, and he's like, "Listen, there's poison gas. Give me 3 minutes to do this, all right?" And so we wait 3 minutes, and then once we get out, we see the place is completely clear. Pepe's there, and he's chilling, and everything's good, right? So we go to the exit, and Beryl is waiting for us there. And what happened was Beryl took Woodrose's spirit by biting into it, right? By taking a piece of it, which is what the scene was when we saw him with Tristan after Woodrose escaped. But Pepe, what turns out was that he actually fought 300 Moors in the ground floor because there was no poison at all. And he used a mystic coat to hide everything, to hide his injuries, because he actually has 300 Moors curse in his body right now, on top of a curse that he added himself. And he injected it into Beryl. And so now Beryl's a lot more weakened than he is before. And we managed to beat him, at the very least enough for him to run away. And so we have to run away, leaving Pepe behind. And a couple of things that we learned is Pepe's origin and how Morgan is actually Beryl's servant, right? So we've seen Pepe's story before on how he lived with a clan, how he basically Itachi'd them, right? And then we get to see how he just doesn't really look up to himself, because he thinks he's no better than Beryl, right? But then he remembers all the way back in Lostbelt 4 when David came to see him and he was like, well, I wonder why you came. And then he realizes, like, oh, David, you scoundrel, you came to see me happy. And then we see Beryl and how when he first arrived here after he summoned Morgan, he went to go get some sleep because he was tired, right? So he just slept on the ground. And then Morgan was like, all right, how do we do this, right? Because as soon as she showed up here, she realized, like, yeah, this is Britain, right? And this is a lost belt. So she was going to try to take control of it. And so she managed to find a way to ray shift her memories into the person that was born here 2,000 years ago, which is Asek, right? AKA Morgan. She sent those memories back, and all the time now, she just remembers, like, oh, shoot, I'm Morgan. So I'm going to have to make this country and build it up, right? But because she sent those memories to her past self, the servant Morgan is dead, like completely dead. So the real life Morgan, who is a fairy here, she's a ruler now because of that. And she's found a way to extend her life and just overall rule Britain after the time of Asek. And when Beryl woke up, like for him it hadn't been like probably like a day or something. But when he woke up, the kingdom was there. So the way that time travel works here reminds me a little bit of Steins Gate in a linear sense, because when Morgan Ray shifted her memories to the past, that created a whole new line. And this is where we get Camelot instead of the barren wasteland that was the original Lost Vault 6. And this is where the Steins Gate line of thinking comes in, because when Beryl wakes up and he sees the new Camelot, he thinks that he died. But to me, I see it the way when Okabe changes timelines, his consciousness just gets shifted into that new body that's in that timeline. So that's how I interpret what happened to Beryl, but with Morgan, she's literally a whole new person. The original Morgan is dead, and this Morgan is the Lost Boat Fairy Morgan with her memories. But regardless, Da Vinci and everybody else pick us up, and now we have to go to Oxford because Oberon sent us a letter saying, yo, we conquered Oxford. So the bell is here for you to ring, come back here, and we can get things going. And now we head off to Oxford. Alright, so this section, the last night, is one of the saddest for me, for sure. But basically, we go to Oxford, and it turns out that the Fang Clan basically surrendered. It was a bloodless siege. So since Woodrose is presumably dead to everybody, they didn't know what to do. So as soon as the Round Table Army came through, the Fang Clan only knew to surrender because they didn't have a figurehead, right? And since the Round Table Army doesn't want the Fang Clan in the rebel army because there was just too much vitriol and pain, Murian suggested, like, all right, why don't you have them come over here? And everybody's just like, all right, sure. So Murian has all the Fang Clan members come over to Gloucester and puts them inside Deferium, where everything right now seems presumably normal. That is until we see a giant Murrian squishing every single one of the Fang Clan fairies. And the reason for it is because she's the last remaining member of the Wing Clan, and the people that exterminated her clan were the Fang Clan. Since this is a reality marble, this is all happening in her office, and Konya Skanya is watching in disappointment because she knows how important the Fang Clan is for defending Britain. So exterminating them is just a bad decision overall by Murian. So Konya Skanya can't watch one of her own clients just act so foolishly. So as we go back to Osford, we see that like, oh shoot, Artoria rung the bell. Now there's only one more left, alright? So we don't know where it is. We don't really need it though. Oberon doesn't think that they do. So it's like, alright, well then let's get all of our forces ready and siege the queen, right? But a soldier comes in and it's like, yo, Londinium is under attack. After Artoria asks like, where is Gareth? And we cut away to Gareth. So Gareth had just come back from a patrol, and she was just chilling, minding her own business, and then she sees that Londinium was under attack. From the inside, it was rebels who infiltrated after all the recruitment stuff was going on. Gareth, being the knight that she is, goes around trying to help all the children that helped her, all the people that she cared about, and overall just trying to protect Londinium. That's the only line of defense left. And Gareth did a great job. She defended the command room because they were going to burn it down, so all the plans would just be in disarray. And after hearing from a soldier that Artoria made it to Londinium, Gareth is in the command room chilling, just like, oh, finally, I'm so glad I could defend it. But then she passes away because of her injuries, and she's just there when Artoria gets to the command room. And so, Artoria picking up Gareth's body, she turns her into a bell and rings the final bell, the bell of Londinium. So as a quick aside, Gareth has had visions of the future ever since like Woodrose and even before that, back in like Wales. So it gives me the inclination to make the assumption of like, oh shoot, what if Gareth is actually a Mirror Clan member? And maybe Gareth in the past with like Grimir and all of them was actually Angel, like that was who she would have been. I can't definitively say anything confidently on the Angel part, but the Mirror Clan part I feel like is true because she would be the last remaining Mirror Clan member after the Phantom Servant disappeared all the way up in Orkney. And since she would be the last one, that would mean that she would basically be the clan leader just like Knocknaria was when she went over to Ireland. And the previous clan leaders were turned into bells of pilgrimage, which is in a sense where you can hear the sorrow whenever Artoria rings one. So Gareth being turned into one with this line of thinking makes sense to me. But I think it's a really cool idea if you start thinking about it. And then Oberon gets a message from his little bug friend Blanca, and he's just like, yeah, so Knocknaria's getting ready to move, Aurora's gonna move, but later, Gloucester is staying put, Spriggan is moving to Camelot, and everything is just going down, right? Like, we're all ready. But that's the end of Gareth, and I'm gonna lie to you, like, it hurts so much because I loved Gareth. She was so great in this story. Like, imagine turning a 2-star into such a memorable character in this story. Like, man, it doesn't matter what rank you are in this game. So if you can, take a moment to mourn for Gareth. But for now, we move on to the night before the decisive battle, the second to last section before we move on to the huge battle in Camelot. I'll see you all there. So this one's pretty short, but everybody congregates in the meeting room. They're trying to strategize what they should do, all this type of stuff, and how they're gonna plan their attack. And so they all decide like, all right, well, we don't know what the other people are going to do, so we're just going to plan our attack with Knocknaria. And once that's all planned, Fujimura leaves and he finds Habitar, and she's basically like, hey, so I'm not going to be there, so take this map of the city so you can know where to go. The place is huge. And he's like, oh, but you're not coming with us? She's like, nah, I can't do it. I don't want to fight Morgan, you know? I got what I wanted, so at this point, I just want to see the end. We cut away to Spriggan infiltrates Babylon's room and basically kidnaps her for future uses, and which is evil, like genuinely scummy. But a lot of the people here are scummy, so it's like, man, at this point, what do you even expect? Cut away to one more person, Woodrose, right? And Woodrose is still alive. He's going through the sewers of Camelot trying to get to Morgan because Aurora basically told him, like, yo, Morgan never sent you anything. Like, she never sent you reinforcements. Basically manipulated him and fostered this huge walking ball of hatred because Woodrose listens to Aurora. So, of course, he's going to trust her, right? Why would she do anything wrong to him? And it only just solidifies the fact that most of the clan heads, if not all of them, are all pieces of garbage. Uh, Aurora is no different. I thought she was, but nope, she isn't. Everybody here has their own ups and downs, but for the most part, they are all in it for self-interest or preservation of their own clan. So, screw all of them and Artoria gang forever. But yeah, that's the end of the night of the decisive battle. Now we move on to the final section of Act 2. Morgan. So we start off Morgan by sieging Camelot, right? We split off our forces to Kakolan and Muramasa in one party fighting Melusine, with us as in like Da Vinci, Fujimaru, Artoria, and Percival fighting Vargas, right? And so we fight her. Knocknario's group is sieging the gates and all that. And then once we beat Vargas, she's basically like, all right, cool. I'm gonna join you guys now. And so she's with us now. Oberon is having watch over her. And things are just going crazy, man. Like, it's genuinely just pure pandemonium in the streets. So once Melusine realizes that Vargas defected, she goes back and leaves because she realized that she lost. And so all that, like, sieging the main gates of Camelot is done. But now it's getting to Morgan and actually killing her, right? So our group is tasked with going there, while Noctaria herself is also trying to get there. We actually meet Morgan and we fight her and all that, and we manage to beat her. But then it turns out that was just an illusion with the equal amount of power to the main Morgan, and then she spawns a bunch of them. And it turns out she's been clapping our forces the entire time, literally destroying us with clones that are equal in strength. And so we easily get defeated. Oberon takes a shot for Artoria, which presumably kills him. And then we go to the castle. The castle is where things go crazy, right? Because Woodwell shows up after being manipulated by Aurora, and he tries to maul Morgan, and he gets a couple of good hits in. But she stabs him with a dagger, realizing like, yeah, you were manipulated, you were betrayed. I didn't do that. And Woodwell is realizing what he did. He asks for forgiveness. He begs because he realized he messed up. She wasn't the one that hurt him. It was Aurora. So he turns into a Moors and dies. And then he tries to go back to her. And then Spriggan shows up and basically has her mutilated, right? Just beating her to death because he has Babo and Sith hostage, right? Aurora cast a broadcast basically saying like Morgan was the one that orchestrated the downfall of the fairies, which isn't true because this Morgan is from this place. It's just that her memories aren't from here, right? And Aurora, to me, she's lying. Like Aurora actually is a snake. So Morgan is in front of her, the court of fairies that she's been talking to the entire story. They all beat her. They literally murder her. And then they take Babo and Sith, and she prays to Hernunos before she gets thrown into the pit. Which you remember, we saw Hernunos in that pit. And then after everything's said and done, our group finds out that Morgan is dead, a lot of people are dead, and that the coronation for the new queen will be held. They won. That's the end of Act 2. Oh my goodness, that was so long. So, we finally reached the end of Lostbelt 6 Act 2. So I want to preface this by saying I actually had to re-record some parts of this because it's June 11th now. I finished editing this June 10th, but then I went back to give it one more revision. And it turns out, for a good portion of these, I forgot to have my mic plugged in. So if you're recording anything, please do make sure to check that your mic is on because I don't know how to describe the anger that I felt having to go back and look through everything to see if I actually talked. I already gave my thoughts on Act 2 in the first part, but to make it short, I think Act 1 is just better for me. I gave that a 9.5, while Act 2 I think is a 9. I think the lore reveals in this were amazing, the characters were just as strong, the moments were more potent because some of them were sadder, while I preferred the happier moments at the beginning. At the end of the day, I feel like this was a great progression for the story. And just overall, Act 2 was a great follow-up to Act 1. It did not disappoint. And so soon I'm going to be covering Act 3, which hopefully shouldn't take as long since it's about the size of Act 1. And I just want to thank you all to whoever's watching this video, whether it's nobody or 100 people. I just want you all to know that I'm so happy that you watched. I wish I could have put these two videos together. I wish I could have put Act 1, 2, and the finale to this in one big video, but I just couldn't because of the limitations of the software that I'm using. So I'm sorry about that. but just know that this is the most effort I've put into a video ever on my entire channel. And granted, I've had two-part videos before, but this was deliberate. While before, I was just too lazy to edit. So I'm just so happy that I was able to put it out, and I'm able to show how much effort I'm trying to put into what I'm doing. So, so now that this is the most current version of me, I want to say thank y'all for watching. I hope y'all enjoy. Act 3 will be coming soon, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.
I I just I just don't like that though.